Dr. Elias Venn had always preferred solitude. The forest surrounding his small research cabin was a sanctuary, untouched by the noise of cities and the relentless march of progress. For years, he dedicated himself to studying the natural world, plants that glowed faintly under moonlight, insects with bioluminescent wings, and the mysterious patterns carved into ancient trees by forces unknown. But nothing could have prepared him for what he found on that unusually cold autumn evening. The sun had dipped below the horizon hours ago, casting long shadows across the forest floor. Elias trudged through thick underbrush, his boots crunching against fallen leaves. He carried a lantern in one hand, its soft golden light barely piercing the darkness around him. His original plan had been simple: collect samples of an unusual moss growing near the riverbank. However, as he wandered deeper into the woods, something caught his eye: a faint shimmer among the roots of a towering oak tree. Curiosity tugged at him like an invisible thread. Setting down his bag, Elias approached cautiously. At first glance, it looked like a patch of silver mist clinging to the ground. But as he knelt closer, his breath hitched. It wasn't mist, it was her. A figure lay crumpled at the base of the tree, her body half hidden beneath a cascade of ivy. Her skin shimmered faintly, reflecting hues of blue and green, like sunlight dancing on water. She was humanoid but undeniably alien, her features delicate yet otherworldly. Elias hesitated, unsure whether to intervene. Who, or what, was she? Was she even alive? Slowly, he reached out, brushing aside strands of damp hair from her face. Her eyes fluttered open briefly, revealing irises that sparkled like galaxies. A low, melodic hum escaped her lips before she slipped back into unconsciousness. Whatever she was, she needed help, and fast. Gathering his courage, Elias carefully lifted her into his arms. She was lighter than expected, almost weightless, as though gravity itself struggled to hold her. Carrying her back to his cabin felt surreal, each step accompanied by the eerie silence of the forest. By the time he arrived, sweat trickled down his forehead, despite the chill in the air. Inside the cabin, Elias laid her gently on a makeshift cot. The flickering light of oil lamps revealed more details about her appearance. Her clothing resembled woven threads of liquid metal, shifting subtly with every movement. Around her wrist was a bracelet etched with intricate symbols that pulsed faintly, glowing brighter when Elias touched them. Most striking, however, were the wounds marring her otherwise flawless skin. They weren't ordinary cuts or bruises. They emitted a soft, rhythmic glow, as if trying to heal themselves. For hours, Elias worked tirelessly to stabilize her. He cleaned her injuries using sterilized tools and applied herbal salves he'd crafted during his years in the wilderness. Though her condition seemed dire, there was something resilient about her. Her breathing steadied, and her pulse grew stronger. At one point, she stirred again, whispering words in a language Elias couldn't understand. It sounded like music, each syllable flowing seamlessly into the next. When their eyes met, Elias felt an inexplicable connection, as though she were sharing secrets too profound for words. As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Elias sat beside her, exhausted but unable to sleep. Questions swirled in his mind. Where had she come from? What brought her to Earth? And why did she seem so important? There was no denying it. This encounter was unlike anything he'd ever experienced. For now, all he could do was wait. Wait and hope that she would wake up fully, ready to share her story. Little did Elias know, this moment would change not only his life, but potentially the fate of humanity itself. Days passed, and the alien girl, whom Elias had named Leora after the radiant glow she seemed to carry, began showing signs of recovery. Her shimmering skin regained its luster, and the glowing wounds on her arms and legs faded into faint scars. Though she remained weak, her presence in the cabin filled it with an aura of quiet wonder. The air around her seemed charged, as if nature itself responded to her being. Plants inside the cabin grew faster than usual, their leaves stretching toward her like eager hands. Even the fire in the hearth burned brighter whenever she was near. Elias spent most of his time observing her, trying to piece together fragments of her story through gestures and drawings. Communication was slow but fascinating. At first, Leora could only point at objects and mimic sounds. When Elias showed her a glass of water, she touched it gently and hummed a soft note that sounded like flowing streams. It wasn't language in the traditional sense, but it conveyed meaning nonetheless. Over time, they developed a rudimentary form of interaction, a mixture of crude sketches, hand signals, and shared moments of understanding. One afternoon, while sitting by the window overlooking the forest, Leora picked up a stick and began drawing in the dirt floor. Her movements were deliberate, forming shapes that resembled stars, planets, and swirling galaxies. Then she added something new, a jagged line cutting across the celestial scene, followed by smaller figures fleeing from it. Elias leaned closer, studying the image intently. "You're running from something," he said aloud, more to himself than to her. Leora nodded slowly, her expression heavy with sadness. She pointed to one of the fleeing figures and then placed her hand over her chest. It took Elias a moment to grasp what she meant, that she was one of those figures. Someone, or something, had forced her to leave her home among the stars. The revelation sent a chill down his spine. What kind of danger could drive someone like her, an advanced being capable of interstellar travel, to seek refuge on Earth? And why here, of all places? These questions haunted him, but he knew pressing too hard might overwhelm her. Instead, he focused on building trust, offering small comforts like warm blankets and bowls of soup made from wild herbs. As days turned into a week, strange phenomena began occurring around the cabin. Electronics malfunctioned without explanation. Radios crackled with static, and lights flickered erratically. One morning, Elias woke to find the plants outside blooming overnight, their petals glowing faintly in the dawn light. Animals gathered near the cabin, unafraid of human presence. Birds perched on the windowsill, chirping melodies that seemed unusually harmonious. Whenever Leora touched an object, a book, a chair, even the wooden beams of the cabin, it emitted a soft hum, as though responding to her touch. These occurrences intrigued Elias, but they also unsettled him. They hinted at powers far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. Yet, despite her abilities, Leora carried herself with humility. She never sought to dominate or control. Instead, she used her gifts sparingly, often to help. Once, when Elias accidentally cut his finger while chopping wood, she pressed her palm against the wound. A warm sensation spread through his hand, and within moments, the bleeding stopped. He stared at her in astonishment, but she simply smiled, a gesture so human it caught him off guard. Their bond deepened with each passing day. Elias found himself drawn to her not just out of curiosity, but genuine affection. There was a purity about her, a kindness that transcended barriers of species and origin. In return, Leora seemed to appreciate his care and patience. She watched him closely as he worked, sometimes mimicking his actions. When he sketched diagrams of plant cells under a microscope, she joined him, adding her own interpretations with fluid strokes of charcoal. But beneath the surface of this growing friendship lay lingering uncertainty. Leora's earlier drawings suggested she hadn't come alone. If others were searching for her, would they be friend or foe? And what role did Earth play in this cosmic drama? Elias couldn't shake the feeling that their peaceful existence in the forest was temporary, a fragile bubble waiting to burst. One evening, as twilight painted the sky in hues of purple and gold, Leora stood by the door, gazing into the distance. Her posture was tense, almost wary. Following her gaze, Elias noticed movement in the trees, shadows shifting where no wind stirred. His heart raced. Was someone, or something, watching them? "Leora," he called softly, stepping beside her. She turned to face him, her eyes filled with both fear and resolve. For the first time, she spoke directly, her voice a cascade of melodic tones that resonated deep within him. Though he couldn't understand the words, their urgency was unmistakable. Whatever peace they'd found was fleeting. Danger loomed on the horizon, and Elias realized that protecting Leora meant confronting forces far greater than himself. The days that followed were a delicate dance between discovery and caution. Leora's presence continued to transform the world around Elias, but the shadows lingering at the edge of the forest weighed heavily on his mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone, that unseen eyes were watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. Yet, despite the growing tension, Leora remained calm, almost serene. It was as if she understood something he didn't, a hidden truth just beyond his grasp. One night, unable to sleep, Elias sat at his cluttered desk, examining the metallic bracelet still fastened around Leora's wrist. The symbols etched into its surface glowed faintly, pulsing in rhythm with her breathing. They fascinated him. Each mark seemed to tell a story, though he lacked the key to decipher it. He adjusted the light of his oil lamp, leaning closer to study the intricate patterns. As he traced one of the symbols with his fingertip, a sudden surge of warmth spread through his hand. Startled, he pulled back. But it was too late. The room erupted in light. A holographic projection burst forth from the bracelet, filling the cabin with shimmering images of distant worlds. Elias stumbled backward, his heart pounding as he took in the scene before him. Floating cities hovered among stars, their spires gleaming like jewels against the endless void. Celestial beings moved gracefully through crystalline corridors, their forms glowing faintly, much like Leora's. But what truly stunned him was the central figure in the projection, a tall, regal being who bore an uncanny resemblance to the alien girl sleeping peacefully in the corner. Elias froze, his breath catching in his throat. The implications hit him like a tidal wave. She wasn't just another traveler or refugee. She was someone of immense importance, someone who commanded respect and loyalty from entire civilizations. Could she be royalty? The thought seemed absurd, yet the evidence was undeniable. The hologram depicted ceremonies, gatherings, and battles, all centered around her. And then, abruptly, the images shifted. The dark force loomed over her homeworld, swallowing cities whole. Chaos erupted as the once peaceful beings turned against each other, tearing their empire apart. The projection faded as suddenly as it had appeared, plunging the cabin back into dim lamplight. Elias sat stunned, staring at the empty space where the hologram had been. His mind raced with questions. What had happened to her people? Why had she fled? And why did the hologram end so abruptly, leaving more mysteries than answers? Before he could process everything, a soft voice broke the silence. "You saw." It was Leora. She stood in the doorway, wrapped in a blanket, her glowing eyes fixed on him. Her expression was unreadable, a mix of resignation and determination. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Elias nodded slowly, gesturing toward the bracelet. "That was you," he said quietly. "Wasn't it?" Leora stepped closer, her movements deliberate. When she reached the desk, she placed her hand over the bracelet, and the symbols dimmed. She hesitated before speaking, her melodic tones hesitant but clear. "My home. Broken. War comes. Many die." She pointed to the bracelet, then to herself. "I run. To save." Her words were fragmented, but Elias understood enough. Something catastrophic had torn her world apart, forcing her to flee. But there was more, something she hadn't shown him in the hologram. He leaned forward, urging her to continue. "Who is chasing you?" he asked gently. "Why are they after you?" Leora's gaze dropped, her shimmering skin dimming slightly as if reflecting her sorrow. After a long pause, she raised her hands, forming shapes in the air. First, she made a circle with her fingers, representing unity. Then she split the circle into two halves, one glowing brightly, the other dark and jagged. Finally, she pointed to the dark half and mined destruction. "They want power," she whispered, her voice trembling. "No care for life. No care for stars." Elias felt a chill run down his spine. If these forces were willing to destroy entire worlds, what would they do to Earth? He glanced at Leora, realizing the gravity of her situation and his own. By sheltering her, he had unknowingly placed himself, and possibly all of humanity, in the crosshairs of a galactic conflict. Yet, abandoning her wasn't an option. Not after everything he'd seen. Over the next few days, Leora shared more fragments of her story. Through gestures and drawings, she explained that her people had once thrived as peaceful explorers, seeking harmony with the universe. But greed and ambition had fractured their society, giving rise to a faction bent on domination. This faction viewed weaker species, not just humans, but countless others, as expendable resources to be exploited. Leora's escape had been an act of defiance, a refusal to let her people's legacy be consumed by hatred. Though Elias marveled at her courage, he couldn't ignore the risks. If her pursuers found her here, Earth would become a battleground. He began preparing for the worst, fortifying the cabin and stockpiling supplies. At the same time, he urged Leora to teach him whatever she could about her technology and abilities. Together, they experimented with simple tools powered by bioenergy, energy drawn from living organisms. Leora showed him how to channel this energy to create light, heat, and even rudimentary communication devices. Their lessons became moments of connection, bridging the gap between their worlds. One afternoon, while practicing telepathic communication, Elias experienced a fleeting vision of Leora's homeworld. He saw towering spires bathed in golden sunlight, heard the harmonious songs of her people, and felt the warmth of a civilization united by love and curiosity. But the vision shifted abruptly, revealing flames consuming the city, cries of anguish echoing through the ruins. Elias gasped, snapping out of the trance. Tears welled in his eyes as he looked at Leora, understanding now the depth of her loss. Despite the weight of her burden, Leora never lost hope. She often gazed at the stars through the cabin window, her expression filled with quiet resolve. "We fight," she told him one evening, her voice steady. "For stars. For life." Elias nodded, though doubt lingered in his heart. Fighting alongside a queen of the stars was no small task. But as he watched her touch a wilting flower and bring it back to life with a single pulse of energy, he realized something profound. Hope wasn't just a feeling, it was a choice. And together, they would choose to stand against the darkness, no matter the cost. As the days stretched into weeks, Elias and Leora worked tirelessly to prepare for the inevitable. The forest around them seemed quieter than usual, as though nature itself sensed the storm brewing on the horizon. Every rustle of leaves, every distant howl of a wolf, made Elias's nerves taut. He knew it was only a matter of time before Leora's pursuers arrived, and when they did, neither of them would be ready. But giving up wasn't an option. Not after everything he'd learned about her world, her people, and the stakes involved. If Earth fell into the hands of those who sought domination, humanity might never recover. Determined to protect both Leora and his planet, Elias decided to reach out for help. It was a risky move. Trust didn't come easily to him, but he couldn't face this alone. He began by contacting a few trusted colleagues, using encrypted messages sent through secure channels. Dr. Maria Alvarez, a former collaborator and expert in xenobiology, was the first to respond. Her reply came cautiously but with genuine curiosity. "If what you're saying is true," she wrote, "we need to act fast. I'll gather resources and meet you at your location." Next, Elias reached out to Samir Patel, a tech-savvy engineer known for his work on renewable energy systems. Though skeptical at first, Samir agreed to join once Elias explained the urgency of the situation. "Aliens or not," Samir had said, "if someone's threatening Earth, we can't sit back and do nothing." Within days, a small team assembled near Elias's cabin. They were cautious outsiders, scientists, activists, and even a few locals curious about the strange happenings in the forest. Elias introduced them to Leora, carefully explaining her story without overwhelming them. At first, Many struggled to believe what they saw, a glowing, otherworldly being standing calmly among them. But Leora's gentle demeanor quickly won them over. She demonstrated her abilities, healing wounds, reviving dying plants, and even powering a broken radio with a touch. By the end of the meeting, the group was united in purpose. They would help repair Leora's spacecraft and defend her against whatever came next. The ship itself was hidden deep within the forest, concealed beneath layers of vines and moss. When Elias led the team to it, their jaws dropped. The vessel resembled a sleek, organic structure, its surface shimmering like liquid metal. Parts of it were damaged, scorched from the crash landing, but it still hummed faintly with residual energy. Leora placed her hands on the hull, closing her eyes as if communing with it. Moments later, sections of the ship shifted, revealing access panels and glowing circuits. Samir immediately got to work, examining the alien technology with wide-eyed fascination. "This is beyond anything I've ever seen," he muttered, running his fingers over the intricate designs. "But if we can figure out how it works, maybe we can fix it." Leora guided him, pointing to specific areas that needed repair. With her help, Samir and the others began piecing together makeshift tools powered by bioenergy, the same energy Leora had taught Elias to harness. Plants nearby pulsed with light as the team drew power from them, channeling it into the ship's systems. Progress was slow but steady, and for the first time, hope began to take root. However, danger loomed closer than anyone realized. One evening, while the group worked late into the night, strange drones appeared in the sky above the forest. They moved silently, their metallic bodies reflecting moonlight as they scanned the trees below. Elias spotted them first, his heart sinking as he realized what they were searching for. "They found us," he whispered, grabbing Leora's arm. Panic spread through the group. Some suggested fleeing, while others urged staying to protect the ship. But Leora stepped forward, her voice firm despite the fear in her eyes. "No run," she said. "We fight." Under her guidance, the team devised a plan to defend the forest. Using Leora's teachings, they created rudimentary weapons powered by bioenergy, devices capable of emitting bursts of light and sound to disorient the drones. They also rigged traps using natural materials, turning the forest itself into a labyrinth of surprises. As preparations continued, Elias marveled at how seamlessly humans and alien technology could work together. What once seemed impossible now felt achievable. The drones grew bolder, descending lower with each pass. One night, they fired probing beams of light into the trees, narrowly missing members of the team. Tension mounted, but so did determination. Everyone understood that failure wasn't an option, not when so much was at stake. On the third night, the attack came. A swarm of drones descended upon the forest, their mechanical whirring filling the air. The team sprang into action, activating their makeshift defenses. Bursts of radiant energy shot upward, scattering the drones and sending them crashing into the trees. Animals fled in all directions, adding chaos to the scene. Despite the odds, the group held their ground, guided by Leora's calm leadership. Just as it seemed the tide might turn against them, reinforcements arrived, in the form of sleek alien ships descending from the heavens. For a moment, Elias feared the worst. Were these new arrivals allies or enemies? Then, to everyone's relief, the ships unleashed beams of light that disabled the remaining drones, driving them away. When the dust settled, figures emerged from the ships, loyalists to Leora's cause, sent to aid their queen. Tears filled Leora's eyes as she embraced one of them, her gratitude evident. The battle was won, for now. But Elias knew the war was far from over. Still, as he looked around at the battered but triumphant faces of his companions, he felt a spark of hope ignite within him. Together, they had faced the unknown and prevailed. And with Leora by their side, they stood ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The arrival of Leora's loyalists brought a brief moment of relief, but it was fleeting. The battle against the drones had been won, yet the scars of conflict lingered, both on the forest and within the hearts of those who fought. Trees smoldered where energy beams had struck, and the air carried the faint metallic tang of scorched technology. Elias stood amidst the chaos, his hands trembling as he surveyed the damage. For all their ingenuity and teamwork, they had barely survived. What would happen when the enemy returned with greater force? Leora, though visibly shaken, remained resolute. She conversed quietly with her loyalists, exchanging information through melodic tones and gestures that Elias couldn't fully understand. The newcomers, a small contingent of beings who shared Leora's luminous skin and graceful demeanor, worked efficiently to secure the area. Their ships hovered silently above the treetops, casting soft glows over the forest like artificial moons. Despite their presence, the weight of uncertainty pressed heavily on everyone. Elias approached Leora cautiously, noticing the tension in her posture. "What did they say?" he asked, keeping his voice low. Leora turned to him, her glowing eyes dimmed by exhaustion. "More come," she replied. "Not just drones. Ships. Big ones." Her words sent a chill down his spine. If what she said was true, Earth wasn't prepared for an invasion, not even with the makeshift alliance they'd formed. As the group regrouped near the repaired spacecraft, tensions began to surface among the humans. Some argued about whether staying put was wise. Others questioned how much trust they should place in Leora and her people. Samir Patel, usually optimistic and pragmatic, voiced concerns about sharing too much knowledge with outsiders, even allies. "We don't know them," he said, gesturing toward the alien loyalists. "For all we know, they could be using us." Maria Alvarez tried to mediate, reminding everyone of the stakes. "If we don't work together, none of us will survive," she insisted. "This isn't just about Earth anymore. It's about standing against something bigger than any of us." But not everyone was convinced. Among the dissenters was Dr. Harold Grayson, a biologist who had joined the team reluctantly. He had always been skeptical of Leora's intentions, viewing her as more of a threat than a savior. That night, while the rest of the group rested or worked on final preparations for departure, Grayson made a fateful decision. Convinced the humanity's survival depended on exploiting Leora's advanced technology, he slipped away from camp and contacted a powerful corporation known for its ruthless pursuit of extraterrestrial resources. Grayson's betrayal unfolded swiftly. Within hours, armed mercenaries arrived at the edge of the forest, their vehicles rumbling through the underbrush like predators stalking prey. They surrounded the cabin and the spacecraft, cutting off escape routes. Leora, sensing danger, stepped forward to confront them, her voice steady despite the situation. "Leave this place," she commanded, her words carrying an authority that silenced the mercenaries momentarily. But their leader, a cold-eyed man in tactical gear, smirked and raised a weapon. "You're coming with us," he said. "And so is your ship." Before anyone could react, the mercenaries fired tranquilizer darts, targeting Leora and her loyalists. Chaos erupted as the group scrambled to defend themselves. Elias lunged forward, shouting warnings, but it was too late. Leora collapsed, overwhelmed by the sedatives. Her loyalists fought valiantly, using their bioenergy abilities to create bursts of light and sound, but they were outnumbered. One by one, they fell, captured alongside her. Elias watched in horror as Leora was dragged into a transport vehicle, her shimmering form limp and unresponsive. Anger surged within him, mingled with guilt, for trusting Grayson, for thinking they were safe. Maria and Samir joined him, their faces etched with despair. "What do we do now?" Samir asked, his voice shaking. "They've taken everything." Elias clenched his fists, determination replacing fear. "We fight back," he said firmly. "We can't let them win." Using fragments of alien technology salvaged during the earlier repairs, Elias and the remaining members of the team devised a daring plan. They would infiltrate the mercenaries' base, a heavily fortified compound hidden deep in the forest, and rescue Leora before she could be interrogated further. Though risky, it was their only chance. Under the cover of darkness, the group moved stealthily through the trees, guided by Maria's knowledge of the terrain and Samir's improvised gadgets. Leora's teachings proved invaluable. They used bioenergy to mask their movements, blending into the natural rhythms of the forest. As they approached the compound, Elias felt a surge of adrenaline. Failure wasn't an option, not when so much depended on their success. Inside the base, Leora endured hours of interrogation, her captors demanding answers about her origins, her powers, and the secrets of her ship. Yet she refused to yield, enduring their questions with quiet dignity. Though weakened by captivity, her resolve never wavered. She knew Elias wouldn't abandon her, and she trusted that hope would guide them to victory. Outside, the rescue team prepared for their assault. Elias glanced at Maria and Samir, seeing the same determination reflected in their eyes. Together, they stepped into the shadows of the compound, ready to face whatever awaited them. The battle ahead would test their courage, their unity, and their belief in a brighter future. But they stood united, bound by a shared purpose. The rescue mission unfolded under the cover of darkness, with Elias leading a small but determined group into the heart of the mercenaries' compound. The air was thick with tension as they crept through dense underbrush, their movements silent thanks to Leora's teachings about harnessing bioenergy. Each step brought them closer to danger, and to Leora. But none of them hesitated. They knew what was at stake, not just her freedom, but Earth's survival. Elias carried a makeshift device created by Samir, a compact emitter powered by bioenergy. It could disrupt electronic systems temporarily, giving them precious seconds to act. Maria followed close behind, clutching a crude weapon fashioned from alien technology salvaged during the earlier repairs. Though neither of them had military training, desperation fueled their resolve. They weren't soldiers, they were ordinary people thrust into extraordinary circumstances. As they approached the compound, the scene before them was daunting. Floodlights illuminated rows of armored vehicles, while guards patrolled the perimeter with weapons drawn. Inside one of the buildings, a stark concrete structure surrounded by barbed wire. They could sense Leora's presence. Her faint glow filtered through cracks in the walls, a beacon calling out to those who sought to save her. "We need to move fast," Elias whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum of generators. "They'll know we're here soon." Samir nodded, adjusting the settings on his gadget. "I'll take care of the cameras. You two focus on getting inside." With precision born of necessity, Samir activated the device, sending pulses of energy toward surveillance equipment mounted around the compound. One by one, the cameras flickered and died, plunging sections of the base into temporary blindness. Seizing the opportunity, Elias and Maria sprinted toward the nearest entrance, their hearts pounding like war drums. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. Mercenaries moved briskly through narrow corridors, their boots echoing against cold floors. Elias signaled for silence as they pressed themselves against the wall, waiting for an opening. When the coast cleared, they slipped deeper into the labyrinthine building, guided by instinct and fragments of information gleaned from Grayson's betrayal. The thought of confronting him filled Elias with rage, but he pushed it aside. Leora needed him now. Finally, they reached a heavily guarded room where Leora was being held. Through a small window, they saw her seated on a metal chair, her hands bound by glowing restraints designed to suppress her powers. Her loyalists were nowhere to be seen, likely imprisoned elsewhere or incapacitated. Despite her weakened state, she radiated quiet defiance, refusing to answer her captor's relentless questions. "This is it," Maria murmured, gripping her improvised weapon tightly. "We have to get her out." Elias nodded, formulating a plan. "I'll create a distraction. You go in and free her." Before Maria could protest, Elias stepped into view, deliberately making noise to draw attention. The mercenaries turned sharply, their weapons trained on him. For a moment, fear gripped him. But then he remembered Leora's courage and steadied himself. "Let her go," he shouted, raising his hands to show he was unarmed. "She doesn't belong to you." The mercenaries laughed cruelly, advancing toward him. But their amusement was short-lived. Just as they closed in, Maria burst into the room, wielding her bioenergy-powered tool to disable the restraints binding Leora. A surge of radiant light erupted as Leora regained control of her abilities, blinding everyone in the vicinity. "Enough," Leora declared, her voice resonating with authority. She stood tall, her shimmering form casting an ethereal glow that seemed to fill the entire room. With a wave of her hand, she unleashed bursts of energy that scattered the mercenaries, knocking them unconscious without causing permanent harm. Her restraint spoke volumes about her character. Even in the face of hostility, she chose compassion over vengeance. Outside, chaos erupted as reinforcements poured into the compound. The mercenaries regrouped, launching a counterattack with overwhelming force. Gunfire echoed through the night, accompanied by the whirring of drones descending from above. Elias, Maria, and Leora fought side by side, using every ounce of ingenuity and determination they possessed. Leora's loyalists joined the fray, having broken free from captivity, their combined strength turning the tide of battle. Yet even as victory seemed within reach, a new threat emerged. Sleek alien ships descended from the sky, their designs unmistakably hostile. Were these the forces pursuing Leora? Had they finally caught up? For a moment, despair threatened to consume them all. Then, unexpectedly, the newcomers revealed themselves, not as enemies, but as allies. These were more of Leora's people, sent to aid their queen and reclaim their lost leader. Together, they unleashed dazzling displays of power, disabling enemy vessels, and driving off the remaining mercenaries. When the dust settled, the forest was eerily quiet once more. Exhausted but victorious, Elias looked around at the battered yet triumphant faces of his companions. They had faced unimaginable odds and emerged stronger for it. Leora approached him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Thank you," she said softly, her melodic tones carrying gratitude beyond words. Though the immediate danger had passed, Elias knew this was only the beginning. The fight for peace across the stars would continue, but for now, they had won a crucial battle. And standing together beneath the starlit sky, they prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The aftermath of the battle left an indelible mark on everyone involved. The forest, once a sanctuary of quiet solitude, now bore scars from the clash between humanity and forces far beyond its borders. Trees were scorched, earth torn apart by energy blasts, and the air carried the lingering scent of smoke and ozone. Yet amidst the destruction, there was also renewal, a sense of hope that hadn't existed before. Leora stood at the edge of the clearing where her spacecraft rested, repaired but not yet ready for departure. Her shimmering skin glowed faintly in the early morning light, reflecting both strength and sorrow. She had reclaimed her freedom, reunited with loyalists who revered her as their queen, and witnessed the courage of those who had risked everything to protect her. But she knew this moment wasn't about celebration. It was about sacrifice. Elias approached her cautiously, his boots crunching softly against the frost-kissed ground. He had spent countless nights pondering what would happen next, dreading the inevitable farewell. Yet, as he looked at her now, he realized it wasn't just sadness he felt, it was gratitude. She had changed him in ways he never thought possible, opening his eyes to possibilities beyond Earth's horizon. "You're leaving," Elias said quietly, his voice heavy with emotion. Leora turned to face him, her luminous eyes filled with understanding. "Yes," she replied, her melodic tones carrying both regret and resolve. "My place is with my people. There is much to heal, much to rebuild." Elias nodded, though the weight of her words settled deep within him. "Will you come back?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She hesitated, gazing up at the stars visible through gaps in the treetops. "When peace comes," she promised, "I will return. Until then, remember, You are part of something greater. Humanity has a role to play among the stars." Her words stirred something within him, a spark of determination. Lyora reached out, placing her hand over his heart. A warm sensation spread through him, filling him with clarity and purpose. When she pulled away, she left behind a small glowing crystal, a fragment of her essence meant to guide them forward. As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink, Lyora boarded her spacecraft alongside her loyalists. The vessel hummed softly, its surface shimmering like liquid silver as it prepared for departure. Elias, Maria, Samur, and the others gathered nearby, watching silently as the ship ascended into the heavens. It left behind a trail of light that lingered briefly before fading into the vast expanse above. For a long while, no one spoke. The silence was profound, yet comforting, a shared acknowledgement of what they had experienced and lost. Then, slowly, the group began to disperse, each person carrying a piece of the journey with them. Maria returned to her research, inspired to study the intersection of biology and alien technology. Samir delved deeper into renewable energy systems, driven by the potential he glimpsed during their time with Lyora. Even Harold Grayson, whose betrayal had nearly cost them everything, found redemption by dedicating himself to ethical scientific practices. But for Elias, life took on a new meaning. He remained in the forest, tending to the land that had become his home. But now, he did so with a broader perspective. The glowing crystal Lyora had given him became a symbol of connection, a reminder that Earth was no longer alone in the universe. He began documenting their encounter, sharing fragments of knowledge with trusted colleagues and organizations committed to peaceful exploration. His writings sparked global interest, igniting conversations about humanity's readiness to join the galactic community. Months passed, and signs of change rippled across the planet. Plants continued to grow faster near the site of Lyora's crash landing, their leaves faintly luminescent under moonlight. Animals acted differently too, as if attuned to energies left behind by her presence. People reported seeing strange lights in the skies. Some dismissed them as natural phenomena, while others believed they were messages from distant worlds. One evening, as Elias sat by the fire outside his cabin, he noticed something unusual. The stars seemed brighter than usual, forming patterns that shifted subtly as he watched. A soft hum filled the air, resonating with the same melody Lyora often used when speaking. For a fleeting moment, he felt her presence again, not physically, but in his heart and mind. "She's still here," Elias murmured, smiling despite the ache of missing her. "In a way, she always will be." What started as a solitary man's discovery in the forest had grown into a movement, a collective effort to prepare humanity for its place among the cosmos. Schools introduced courses on interstellar diplomacy, governments formed alliances dedicated to peaceful coexistence, and scientists collaborated openly to bridge gaps between species, all because of one being who dared to believe in unity, even when faced with despair. And somewhere, light years away, Lyora looked back at Earth through the viewport of her ship. She saw its blue-green orb suspended in the void, teeming with life and potential. Though her path ahead was fraught with challenges, she carried with her the memory of a world that had chosen hope over fear. In time, she vowed, she would return, not as a queen seeking refuge, but as a friend bringing harmony. Until then, Elias and billions like him would gaze upward, dreaming of the day when humanity would truly stand among the stars.